Hello, I'm Mr. Eliason, and welcome to World History. Today we're going to talk about the South American Empire of the Inca, both their accomplishments and then their eventual conquest at the hands of the Spanish, very similar to what happened to the Aztecs. So let's dive into our story. Here are your basic objectives for today. Make sure you can take note of them, and let's talk Inca. So the Inca Empire is a relatively sort of long, stretched out empire along the coast of South America, covering both the Andean highlands and sort of the coastal plain area, which is where you get most of their fertile land. As you can see, just like the Aztecs, they grew relatively slowly over time, conquering and incorporating in different groups of native people. The Inca specifically used the staple crop of potatoes to provide a lot of their calories because, of course, the Andean highlands are relatively mountainous, rocky, with poor soil, and so potatoes grow especially well in those conditions, providing a significant source of calories for the Inca people. The Inca suffered from one of the same problems that the Aztecs had, namely that they lacked really large, useful domesticated animals. Not to throw too much shade at the llama, but although you can use the llama to pull some stuff and put some stuff on its back, you can't really effectively ride them, and they're somewhat ornery creatures, and so using llamas and alpacas to do tons of labor is just not super easy, like it is with cows, horses, and some of the other animals that we're traditionally familiar with. In order to expand their empire, the Inca incorporated in subject peoples by providing more sort of arable land, both by setting up terraces and then also establishing irrigation, allowing the growth of more corn and, of course, potatoes. So, because they could expand the arability and the profitability of the areas they conquered, the Incans were able to improve the lives of the people who they incorporated into their empire, leading to a more peaceful, sort of cohesive society than we saw with the Aztecs, who really resented the sort of tributary requirements that their Aztec overlords put over them. Infrastructure was absolutely key to the Inca Empire. The Inca Empire is, of course, very long and thin and goes through some very difficult terrain, so terracing is absolutely necessary as far as reclaiming land, as are irrigation channels, as our primary source on the last slide showed us. Roads are also absolutely essential. The Inca Empire had two parallel roads stretching along the entire length of their empire. They were built in sort of a similar method that the Romans used, sort of paved with stones and with irrigation channels on the side to allow water to sort of flow off of them. This allowed the Incas to more completely integrate in their empire. It allowed for communication, trade, and travel across the empire. And the Incas had a series of post runners who would run messages in sort of a relay system from one end of the empire to the other, passing on these messages in these sort of coded, knotted chords. And so these runners would allow Inca rulers to communicate even with the furthest reaches of their domains. In order to more effectively coordinate and to supply their armies, the Inca also, as this document says, quote, "There were many storehouses filled with supplies and other needful things. Thus, in times of war, wherever the armies went, they drew upon the contents of these storehouses without ever touching the supplies of their confederates." So, by not eating all of the resources in the areas they headed through, this made sure that the local people did not resent the Inca rulership and again provided for a higher quality of life. And also, quote, "If there came a lean year, the storehouses were opened and the provinces were lent what they needed in the way of supplies. Then, in a year of abundance, they paid back all they had received." So, the Inca were able to help plan for famine or for crop failures, preventing famine and making sure that all of their people were fed. And, quote, "Thus on certain days each lord went to his lands and took the plow in his hand and cultivated the earth." Suffering and laboring along with his people, these Inca lords would then understand their suffering and would be more sort of sympathetic to their demands and interests. The Inca Empire also overcame some geographic challenges, building cities up in the mountains, most famously the temple city of Machu Picchu, sitting up high in the Andes Mountains. These amazing architectural accomplishments are still there to this day and remain one of the most impressive lasting legacies of the Inca people. The Inca also had an advanced system of medicine, both using crops and herbs that grew in Central America to treat a variety of different diseases, and we have accounts of the Incans successfully performing brain surgery on people and having people survive this process, which I really can't imagine because we're before anesthesia and before any sort of before any sort of antibiotic. So I imagine that this was extraordinarily painful and people were very, very open to infection afterwards. But Inca doctors were, again, we have accounts and we have fossil records that they were able to successfully perform brain surgery on people and have them survive. So that's a spectacular accomplishment. The Incas' advancement in medicine is somewhat ironic because smallpox is what really devastated and brought their empire low. As we talked about, smallpox and measles were endemic diseases that came along with the Europeans as part of the Columbian Exchange. They devastated the Native American population of the Caribbean and played a crucial role in the fall of the Aztec Empire. And they also brought the Inca Empire low, not by necessarily wiping out all their population, but specifically because of the people who died. So of course, obviously, any large numbers of people dying is going to lead to some measure of societal instability, but the king of the Incas succumbed to smallpox, and his two sons, Atahualpa and Huascar, were having a civil war over who would replace him. And it's under this context that the Spanish showed up. Francisco Pizarro was the conquistador who brought low the Inca Empire. He showed up in a similar manner to Cortez in the middle of this Inca civil war. He decided to side with one of the Inca rulers against the other, and so he sided with Atahualpa and helped him capture Huascar. Then, once Huascar was captive, Atahualpa sent all of his troops out away from the city in order to camp at night and show Pizarro how powerful he was. Pizarro took advantage of this opportunity, grabbed him, and ended up holding him hostage, demanding that the Inca people fill a room full of gold lest he kill Huascar. The Inca then filled a room full of gold. Pizarro then killed Huascar anyway, married his wife, and declared himself Emperor of the Inca. And so, just like that, with a lightning stroke, the Inca Empire is brought low in a similar manner to the Aztecs. The collapse afterwards happened quickly. Pizarro was killed by one of his lieutenants, and Peru collapsed into chaos, with no real political order controlling anything. It would take a number of years for the Spanish to restore order and integrate Peru into their society. So unlike the Aztecs, where you had this lightning stroke decapitating the empire, with the Spanish stepping in smoothly, Peru is going to collapse into chaos, death, and disorder. And so that is the rise and the fall of the Inca Empire. Hopefully you can answer these objective questions within some detail, and then tomorrow we'll start talking about integrating all these territories into a cohesive colonial system. Thank you for listening.